We will go ahead and get started. It's 8:03. So I have my friends from AIMx with me tonight. We met recently in February, and I am so thrilled to be partnering with them as a sponsor of podiatrymeetings.com and just working collaboratively on lots of different things. They're amazing guys. AIMx is run by John and Jamie and Justin. Justin and Jamie are brothers. John's a cousin. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Yes. Okay, and they're awesome. They're super fun. They have really interesting products that they've brought to podiatry. So tonight we're going to learn about one of those, Liposana, and all the different ways that you can use that in your practice. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to John to introduce our speakers tonight.
All right. Well, thank you, Anne. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and be partnered with podiatrymeetings.com. So we are AIMx Podiatry, and we're really excited to be partnered with Brightsite to bring y'all the most complete fat product available today, Liposana. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces online tonight. And for those that do not know us, thanks so much for joining us. Before we jump into the presentation, I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about who we are. Like Anne said, we are a small family-owned business. Justin and Jamie are my cousins. It's just the three of us. We think we're a lot of fun to work with, but the reason why we created AIMx was to bring forward thinking and innovative podiatrists the most advanced cash pay products on the market to help grow your practice and to offer your patients the most up-to-date patient care available. Now, I'm really excited and honored to be introducing two amazing people here today. So we have Dr. Tweet Ho Ellsworth. She is the owner of Align Foot and Ankle in Austin, Texas. And we also have Molly Saunders, who's the Senior Director of Regenerative Medicine Programs at Brightsite Medical. And last but not least, I'm John Zagurski. So we're going to have some fun tonight, guys. We are going to kick this off with Dr. Ho telling y'all a little bit about herself and her philosophy whenever it comes to cash pay modalities. So Dr. Ho, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, John, for that introduction. So I graduated from Scholl, graduated from residency in 2010. Straight out of residency, got a job in a large multi-specialty group here in Austin, Texas. And eventually, I worked there for about 12 years. Eventually, it got bought out by a hospital corporation. And, while I was there, it was just like I found that anything I wanted to do, I felt like I was forced to practice in a box. Anything I wanted to do that was advanced really had to be approved by the board. And so not long after that, I left, but I really had no idea what reimbursement was. I didn't know anything, the first thing about running a practice or owning a business. So I left that setting to join as an associate to private practice, and only to find myself in another box. And, I started minimal staffing, 2-room office, and minimal staffing was literally my husband and I. And he had just retired. He helped me out. And, we made do with one virtual assistant. And while we waited for our office space to be built out, and I'll hit up on what happened from 2022 to 2025. But at the start of 2022, I basically opened up my 1,800 square foot office space, and I knew that I wanted, to incorporate all the advanced modalities, office-based surgical suite, minimally invasive surgery, laser, shockwave, and regenerative therapies. And had you told me, I'm located in central Austin, very high real estate. I was stressed out thinking what I was going to do if I could just make ends meet, pay my lease, and hopefully make ends meet. But if you had told me or asked me that, I was going to potentially make 7 figures in my first year, I probably would have laughed. I mean, the thought of even making that in my first 5 years or 10 years, I wouldn't have believed. But I attribute a lot of that to what I've done that's really out of the box of how we normally practice podiatry. Um, so you can go to the next slide, Justin. But when I left to start my own practice, I looked around at what was being done, and I knew I wanted to do it differently. I wanted to create something niche, something that truly stood apart from other practitioners around me. And I saw how chiropractors and dentists had elevated their fields by stepping away from conventional modalities and really traditional insurance models. At that time, I wasn't ready to go full direct care, and I'm still not direct care at all. But I knew that I had to find a way to stay afloat financially with declining insurance reimbursements. My goal became clear. I wanted the majority of my revenue to eventually come from cash-based services, not insurance. So when I started, my revenue breakdown was about 80% insurance and 20% cash. Today, it's actually 50-50, and that shift has been intentional. Regenerative medicine played a huge role in making that possible. And these advanced modalities gave me the tools to kind of bridge a gap between patients who didn't want surgery and those who weren't achieving progress with conservative care. But more importantly, it really changed the way I treat patients. Instead of saving these treatments as a last resort, I now introduce them early, giving patients the option to be proactive in their care and then really taking charge of their healing journey. So that was really the missing piece. Regenerative medicine at that time I still think isn't widely used in podiatry. And I saw an opportunity to change that. So I really just molded and built my practice grounded in regenerative, restorative, and minimally invasive. And I truly believe that this is a modality that has breathed new life into podiatry. And it's really created a win-win for both patients and providers. And today I'm really excited to kind of help introduce this team and launch something truly special, Liposana. And I think it's a regenerative product that's specifically for the forward-thinking podiatrist.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dr. Ho. Thanks for sharing. It's been awesome to watch your journey as well. So what is Liposana? So Liposana is the only complete allogenic fat solution on the market today. So what do we mean by that? So Liposana has all of the 3 main pillars of native adipose tissue because it is 100% fat. So we have our intact extracellular matrix. So we have our scaffolding. We have all of the native growth factors that are natively found in adipose tissue. And I think what may be the most important is we have intact fat cells. And I think Molly has some really insightful things to say about the benefits of having the intact fat cells, because we are, as far as we know, the only product on the market that has it.
Yeah, John, and I think it's a great call out because when we look at the structure of fat, adipocytes actually make up about 80% of the volume of adipose tissue. So most of what we think of as fat are really these large lipid-filled cells. They're a major part of what gives adipose its form and function. And so if you remove the adipocytes, what you're left with is mostly extracellular matrix. And while the ECM has some valuable components, it doesn't provide the same structure or function. So to truly mimic native adipose tissue, it's important to retain those adipocytes, which we are able to do with our Liposana processing. And this is important because these cells are essential for one of fat's primary roles, which is, of course, cushioning and mechanical support. Without them, we're missing a big part of what makes adipose tissue so unique and useful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know that was one of the reasons that we were so excited to partner with you guys on this product, because there's not been any new innovation in this space for quite some time. So something that you guys say that I think is so interesting is that you refer to Liposana as a biological boot. Can you tell us how that kind of came about?
Yeah, so I think it was actually Dr. Ala Danielkovich. I think she's on the call. Shout out. Our founder and chief scientific officer who first came up with the term. We originally started referring to Liposana as a form of biological offloading. And so mechanical offloading, of course, has been around for quite some time with the primary purpose of reducing or redistributing pressure. Well, Liposana does the exact same thing, but at the biological level, which is what makes it unique and where the term biological offloading came from. And so over the past few months, we've been playing around with how we talk about it, and biological boot just kind of stuck. It's alliteration, people love alliteration, and it just makes sense in the world of podiatry.
And that's definitely the reason why we believe that Liposana has been received so well by all of the patients that receive it, because they can really see the immediate benefits of the product. And lastly, I think one of the most important thing about the product is the long-term benefits. This is not a product that you have to continually reapply. We know these products cost a little bit of money, but your patients aren't going to be coming back in again in 6 months asking for a reapplication, because this product actually works to remodel the patient's native tissue for long-lasting outcomes. Something that really excites me about Brightsight is their interest in clinical studies, and Molly was a co-author on one of their pilot studies, and I know that we are continuing to work on more scientific data daily. But Molly, would you mind talking a little bit about one of the initial studies that Brightsight put out?
Yeah, so here we're highlighting a pilot study that looked at 12 diabetic neuropathic patients who had a pre-ulcerative lesion that received Liposana. Now, you might be thinking, well, this population is not the target population that I think about using this product for. But keep in mind, these are actually some of the very first patients to receive Liposana. So our primary goal at the time was just to assess safety and get a sense of the clinical impact and early durability of the product. And what we saw was really encouraging. Of course, the most important thing is patient safety. And during this study, and even to date, 150 plus patients later, there haven't been any product-related adverse events reported. But beyond that, we also saw noticeable improvement in clinical appearance of the implanted area, and the product has continued to remain palpable at the site of implantation. Interestingly, we did actually have one patient that, although he was neuropathic, did feel pain, and he reported a significant pain reduction after receiving the Liposana implant. And I also just want to note here, all of these patients had a history of plantar ulceration, and to date, none have developed ulcers at the Liposana site. At the time this was published, we had follow-up for a couple patients out to 10 months. So we were starting to get a picture of initial durability, but on the next slide, you'll see we've compiled some of the latest patient data. So you'll see a couple cases, 17 and 18 months out at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Molly. And like I said, guys, it's been fun getting to know the Brightsight crew, because they do have a big interest in clinical data, and you guys will be seeing more stuff coming out from us as time goes on here. So thank you again, Molly. So we're gonna get into the fun stuff now. I'm gonna pass the ball back over to Dr. Ho Ellsworth, and we're gonna get into the practical applications of Liposana and how you guys can incorporate this into your practice.
Yeah, so I think the relevant applications, I think for most doctors, it makes sense, right? Almost everybody that I see has some level of fat pad atrophy. I explain this to my patients when they come in, that as we age, the areas that we lose fat is typically our face, our hands, and our feet. And so when we look at a patient's foot complaints, I mean, when they walk in, you're going to see typical things like plantar fasciitis, Morton's neuroma, generalized forefoot pain. ball of foot pain, even pre-ulcerative lesions like porokeratoses or intractable keratoses and painful calluses, or even the sites that have post-surgical scarring with tissues thinned out. But, when patients walk in with neuroma pain or forefoot pain, heel pain, I think something that is really kind of a silent contributor that we don't ever think about is fat pad atrophy. The biggest clue is if the pain worsens barefoot on hard floors, but then relief comes with cushion or offloading, we need to take that into consideration. So outside from the typical things that we treat, Morton's neuroma, sesamoiditis, capsulitis, what if we look at how fat pad atrophy can actually contribute to some of that pain, and start really taking a different look at it in that regard, and you'll see that the spectrum of your pain can really be attributed, can be contributed to fat pad atrophy. So I think that's something we do need to kind of start thinking about, in the back of our head, and incorporating that evaluation into all chronic foot pain that we typically treat. So when we talk about incorporating Liposana or any cash-based service, I feel like there's a huge mindset or a resistance sometimes, like the fear of incorporating these modalities into our office. But what if we flip the script, and instead of waiting until patients actually fail all conservative modalities, orthotics, shoe changes, activity modifications, what if we laid out a full plan from the start? Kind of a good, better, best model, right? So lifestyle changes are good, right? But if we help them understand what better and best actually look like, I think we can really change that conversation. When we present Liposana early in the conversation, not as a last resort, but as a proactive option, it reframes the narrative. It becomes a patient choice, a patient empowerment. And I think that most of the time, when we bring these services up, I think, doctors want to know, okay, how do I incorporate this? And what if my patients say no? And it's not really, most of the time, it's not the patients who are the barrier. It's us, right? We put up our own barriers, mental barriers, and we assume that they won't go for it. We might project our financial situation or willingness onto them without ever really offering the full picture. And so we need to change the algorithm, and not the technical algorithm, but our mental algorithm, right? The one where we hold back instead of holding back the good stuff and, check that, every insurance box has been completed, and, let's change that. Let's educate patients early. I get a lot of patients coming in to see me as a second opinion because they've already seen somebody, from the outset, and they said all they offered me was change my shoes and, maybe some orthotics. But what if we educate the patients early, present them with a clear roadmap from conservative to regenerative, and let them decide, right, how far they want to go? And if they want to be more aggressive with it, and they want to, go ahead and move forward with the best package, that completes everything from lifestyle changes to custom orthotics, and then, yeah, let's do a Liposana injection. Why not present that early on? I think when we do that, we also reduce the chance that they're not gonna go anywhere else looking for answers, because they already know that you've laid out a plan for them. We've told them everything they need to make a clear choice.
Dr. Ho, can you tell us a little bit how your conversations with patients have changed over the last 2 years? Because I know when you initially started your practice, this wasn't something that you were super comfortable with either. So how did your conversations look 2 years ago to how they look today when you're actually in a room talking to the patients?
That's a good question, John. I mean, I had a lot of these products available on hand in my office. And I mean, I want to say it took me a year before I really embraced and put into practice. And, as you make these changes just like anything else, it takes practice and it takes time. So, don't be frustrated or hard on yourself that you didn't offer these things to your patients. But with time, you can start changing the mindset and really kind of knocking down kind of those barriers brick by brick, right? And start, I mean, there were times when I would go through my traditional approach like I always have. And then after they left, I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I offer this to them? And it took time. And I think it's something that for anybody, changing your pattern, especially if you've been in practice for decades, changing your practice or your rhythm, it's going to take effort, it's going to take practice, but it has to start somewhere. And if you don't start making those changes little by little, you're never going to change. You're going to stay stagnant.
And Doc, have you been surprised by how many patients are actually receptive to these modalities?
Yes, I am. Now, even now, there's times when I have patients that bicker at the front. I hear them bickering at the front desk. They don't want to pay a $10 copay, $20 copay. Surely they're not going to pay $1,300 for an injection, right? But you'd be surprised, because when you talk to your patients and you take the time to educate your patients on what focus on what their goal is. They want to be able to walk without pain, return to their activities. When you offer them kind of that best package up front, you'd be surprised at how many of them say, yeah, let's go for it. But what's the worst they can say? Well, no, doc, let me try the good or the better package and revisit it. But at least you've opened up that channel where they go, you know what, I'm going to think about that. But they're not going to go down the street to the next podiatrist and get a second opinion, because you've already laid out a clear map for them. And I think that's really important, is taking the time and making the time to educate your patients.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We talk to so many doctors and they're like, we're not salespeople. We don't want to sell the product, but we're not selling the product, right? We're giving the patients options that are available to them.
Yeah, I stay away from that word altogether, because really it puts a lot of pressure on us, right? When we think about sales, because that's not what we do. Naturally, doctors don't sell, like, we educate. But when you do take the time to educate your patients, they're gonna they have options, and they're gonna make the choices that's best for them. And so I think, the best thing is keep products like this on hand, readily available, because you never know if they're like, yeah, let's do it, whether it's today or tomorrow or next week. I think having it available and on hand and offering it as really early on is really key.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, let's talk about, why Liposana, stands out. It's kind of, to me, kind of the smarter, more strategic solution here for generalized foot pain. But when a patient comes in, they either have chronic heel pain or, Morton's neuroma, things like that. We often default to steroids. We all know that with steroids, they're going to get fast relief. Yeah, because it knocks out the inflammation really quickly. But it doesn't rebuild or regenerate or heal anything. In fact, we all know that it actually over time weakens the tissues around it, the structures around it, and causes fat pad atrophy. On the other hand, fillers, they're often borrowed from a cosmetic space, and it's formulated for the foot. I mean, for the face, not the foot. Formulated for the face, not the foot. And that's a big problem for us, because the foot is a really high pressure, weight bearing structure, and fillers hold up really well in the face, but they break down really quickly, and they can migrate, cause nodularities and granulomas under mechanical stress. And so they're not designed for the demands of walking, running, or even standing. But Liposana stands out because it changes really everything. I feel like it acts like more than just a temporary patch. It actually, you've got your extracellular matrix, growth factors, cytokines for tissue repair. and all the ingredients you need for real tissue repair, supports healing, and eventually can integrate with your native tissue over time. So, most of my patients report, even with some of the current other products out there for fat products, it's a more comfortable, and it's more gradual and sustained. So really, I think instead of waiting for your patients to cycle through these things, from short-term fixes, we need to start presenting these regenerative options right up front. And it's, especially an option that's built for the foot. So let's talk about application protocol and my approach. Obviously, I think it can vary from person to person and preference, but how I do it in my office is I locate and palpate the location of atrophy. I mark or map the area planned with a surgical marking pen, kind of locate the area of peak pain, and just, either via clinical exam, or if you have an ultrasound, you can use that as well. First and foremost, you always exclude active infection. And then the next thing is, I prep the area with an antiseptic, and then I perform a block of 2% lidocaine proximal to the planned site of application. You want to try and stay as proximal as you can, and not obliterate the area or infiltrate the area that you actually want to apply this product. I like to find a central portal. I plan out where I'm going to enter with my 18-20 gauge needle, and at a very shallow angle into the subcutaneous tissue, I'll basically fan out, and use the needle almost like a cannula to create an opening in a fanning technique, and then I fill in a retrograding fashion. And then as I completely infiltrate the area with the product and I've finished off, I gently apply counter pressure at the site as I pull out the needle. And I kind of put pressure there for about 45 to 60 seconds, just to make sure that skin and tissue kind of seal over that area. And I let my patients sit there for about 5 minutes. And then I apply and just kind of mold around, gently distribute the product and palpate around the area, and then put a light dressing on the area. And then post application, if you want to go to the next slide there, Justin. Well, we'll go in post-procedure protocol. What you can expect is some mild swelling, bruising, just like any injection site. Patients are going to have that sense of fullness or pressure. And I just have them rest, ice, elevate the area, and just take Tylenol. Avoid NSAIDs for the first 1 to 2 weeks, because like we said, it does create like an inflammatory response and elicit cytokines. So we want that natural, process to occur and allow the body to incorporate that. But really, for me, first 72 hours, if it's at the ball, the foot, the heel, whatever, I try to non-weight, have them walk on the heel or maybe on the forefoot if you're doing a heel injection, but try to stay off that area and apply any pressure to that area, and rest, limit any active activities. And, and then in the first week, after the first like 3-4 days, I start having them use a offloading cam boot. Or you can use like a Darko shoe. I like a Duo Darko, which has like a really thick, nice sole to it. And then almost like a rocker toe sole to it. Or you can even use, I've heard other doctors use like a punch out Pegasus insert to kind of offload the area. But they can start doing some light walking, avoid any high impact exercises, and really just kind of stick to activities of daily living. And then after 2 weeks, they can gradually increase their activities with, lifestyle activities. I still restrict them from any high impact exercises. And then they can gradually advance out of their offloading boot into supportive shoe and orthotic, as tolerated. Really emphasize supportive shoe, kind of a rocker toe like a Hoka or Ultra Olympus, Ghost Max, kind of a maximum cushioning shoe. And then after 4 weeks, they can return to exercises as tolerated. I emphasize also lifestyle. If they want the product to last, avoid barefoot walking. I love recovery sandals like UFOs and Hoka Aura sandals, Birkenstocks, anything that really, avoid the barefoot walking and really allow that product to just stay in place for as long as it can. I remind patients it's an investment. So if they want their investment to last longer, they follow these protocols and they'll have good outcomes.
Yeah, you guys will be happy to know, hopefully, that we have partnered with Brightsight, and we are creating a lot of resources for y'all. I'm seeing some questions pop up in the chat, just some general questions, just so y'all know. I did spend all last Sunday at Dr. Ho's office, and we filmed like several instructional videos that I think are going to be very beneficial. We're working with Brightsight to create some different application graphs and just different tools that we think will be a great playbook to help y'all be more efficient with incorporating this into your office. So just some quick logistics before we get into the questions. Thank you, Dr. Ho. So Liposana can be stored in standard refrigeration for 6 months. If you order it by 1:30 Eastern time, you can have it by 10:30 the next day. It does come in 1.5 cc vials, and it is incredibly quick and easy to use. One of the things we hear most frequently is that it's much easier to use compared to some other products out there on the market. So we like to hear that. So pricing for the product is it's $600 if you buy 1.5 cc vials. If you buy 2, the price is $1,080, dropping the price to $540 a piece. And if you buy 5, the cost is $2,500, dropping the price to $500 a piece. So on the next slide here is this is our website, AIMx Podiatry. To learn more about us, feel free to add us on Instagram at AIMx Podiatry. If you have any questions, that is my cousin Justin's email. He is the most responsive of the 3 of us, so please reach out to him. And then there is our company line phone number that you can call or text us at. And we were going to leave you guys with a little testimonial video here that Dr. Ho had from one of her more challenging patients. We think this is a really great time to get involved in regenerative medicine, guys. Like we said, this is the reason that we created AIMx Podiatry. Whenever we were out there visiting with different podiatrists, we can tell that there's so many folks that are frustrated with declining reimbursements and want to offer more cash pay modalities, but just aren't quite sure how to do it. We're here to help y'all. We're here to support you. And hopefully you guys get results just like this guy here in this chair. That's actually a pretty interesting story. Dr. Ho can maybe.
Yeah, I can fill in. So this guy is he's a longtime patient of mine, but he still works part-time at Lowe's in the garden center. So he's on concrete floors all the time. And he came in with kind of, is it capsulitis pain? Is it's plantar subsecond pain? But really, he improved with offloading and more cushioning. And so I thought, it really mimicked that of a Morton's neuroma type pain, but there was still like where I palpated, it was really right underneath that subsecond, but there was not a lot of inflammation. There's not capsulitis, bursitis. He doesn't have predislocation syndrome, any of that. And I thought he'd be a great candidate for this.
And injection 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
you hear now?
All right, here we go.
I put you in a boot for a week, and you were very compliant with that. You went to work with the boot, kept everything in place, and then after a week, you got out of the boot. And you said you felt improvement, but the one area that you felt most improvement was what? The biggest difference?
Well, it was in the center of the foot where the pressure is.
And now I don't have that pressure
Okay,
on that foot. And I don't have as much pressure on the tendon
okay,
on the bottom of the foot.
okay. But what you just said about barefoot walking, you couldn't walk without
No,
a shoe.
I couldn't. No, I couldn't get up and walk from A to B and without that.
Without the shoe, without a shoe before. And now you,
I could if I had to. I don't,
okay.
but I could.
Good
But
answer.
that's when you said you felt the biggest difference was when you walked without a shoe.
Yes, I felt the pad.
Yeah.
I actually could feel a pad for a
Okay.
change.
Okay,
It wasn't just bone on tendon.
okay. Yeah, or bone against the ground, right? Okay, all right, perfect. And then did you, after the injection, did you have any reaction, like more pain or swelling, throbbing, anything?
No.
Okay, all right,
Well, you know, just from the injection area, you said where the needle
right,
injection, but that went away pretty quick.
okay, all right. And then, but so overall, pain to the ball of your foot.
Yes, overall, it's been perfect. I mean, I just daylight and dark.
Beautiful, great, thank you.
All right, good. I'm happy that worked. Daylight and dark. So that's a
Daylight and dark.
pretty good one.
But you know what? He. I think he was like, oh, you know, but I don't. I was like, when he did mention to me, he's like, that's the first time I took a step without my shoe, and I didn't have pain. But I was like, but you're not going barefoot anymore, right? Like you're wearing good. But I liked how he was like, oh, but I don't. So, anyways, daylight and dark.
Awesome, guys.
Personal
So
opinion.
we wanted to leave a little bit of time here. Again, thank you for so many people for showing up tonight. This has been awesome. And it seems like there's a handful of questions that we want to try to get answered for y'all.
Yeah, and there are a ton of questions in here, which I love to see. So thank you guys for putting your questions into the Q&A. If you haven't typed in your question, go ahead and do that now. We'll get them all answered. The Q&A box, there should be a little icon along the bottom of your screen, and you can just type your question right into there. All right, so I am going to rapid fire, and you guys, whoever answers first wins. Okay. So how does this differ from Leneva?
You know, Molly, I'm gonna let you answer this one because I feel like I'm doing a poor job of explaining how it's different. But it's definitely the processing, guys. So the way that our product is processed is completely different. That's why we have a complete fat solution. That's why the product integrates and remodels the tissue differently. But Molly, I think, can also explain it from a scientific side as well.
High level science, but yes, John, that's exactly right. It just boils down to the processing. So Leneva, when that's processed, those adipocytes are removed. So it's left with just extracellular matrix, basically. And so that places actually a heavy burden on the patient, their own tissue, to recruit their own adipocytes to the scaffold that's been implanted. On the flip side, Liposana, of course, has those adipocytes. So immediately upon implantation, you're getting that cushioning. And I know animal studies are not human studies. Some humans are animals, in my opinion. But I think their animal studies show initial migration of adipocytes at 3 weeks takes up to 3 months for it to become fully saturated. In our animal studies, we see revascularization of the implanted adipocytes within 3 days.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I know we have a bunch of questions, but Dr. Ho, can you just tell a difference from an application standpoint?
Yeah, I think when our patients look at, you know, I've used Leneva, you know, since I opened my practice as well, and Liposana, and just the difference between the two. It's like, it's clearly one is fat, right? Like patients can look at that and say, that's fat, that's natural. That's what they, and that's what they kind of go for. And you know, whereas Leneva, you know, I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but when you kind of squirt it back and forth, I feel like I tell my patients the difference between the two, and I have both options available, but it's like one of those things where, you know, I say it's kind of like a double stuffed Oreo. You know, I mean, if you ever know, like with double stuffed Oreos, like you're not really getting double the icing. You're getting icing with half air infiltrated into it. And it looks, so I really think that, the native adipocytes acts in a way where patients actually, it's just more comfortable for the patient post-injection too. I see that that's the biggest difference. And you're getting amazing results, and patients, they just like the like for like use.
Awesome.
All right,
What are
thank
the
you
costs to the
guys.
patient? Oh, sorry, I was going to jump on that.
What are the costs of the patient?
Oh, good question, Ann. So it's really whatever you want it to be, right? Like whatever. I mean, for me, you test your market. If no one else is offering it in your area, then hey, you can do primo pricing. But for me, I priced mine at 1,300. And you take into all the things that we take into consideration when we do anything. But what the cost, John already shared with you. But I know a lot of doctors, and I think my pricing is actually relatively low. But I tested my market, and that's kind of where I got majority acceptance. So I'm happy to stick with that. And I actually want to make it readily available to my patients. But I've seen other practices price this at 1,500 up towards 2,000 as well. So it's really what how you want to price it.
But I think Dr. Ho's right. I think we want these products to be more accessible. So I think pricing it that's appropriate for your area will give you the opportunity for more utilization.
Yeah, whenever I price anything, I think you should take into your malpractice, your overhead, all the things that you risk when you put a product into a patient. And like to you, what's that equate to in terms of what you should price it at? That should be a good value for the patient, but it should be fair for you, right? I mean, you shouldn't be undercutting yourself thinking about all the risks that you take anytime you're doing anything, whether it's a local anesthetic injection, right? But to me, in my opinion, insurance undervalues us, and we shouldn't be basing our price off of insurance reimbursement.
All right. How much thickening of the fat pad does one expect? Quantitative speaking. What diagnostic imaging are you using to quantify the increase?
So I can take that one. It's interesting. So we've done some patients, we've seen ultrasound imaging and MRI imaging. And actually what we're seeing is initially after Liposana is implanted, there is this tissue thickness boost. But over time, we see that decrease a little bit. It's still above baseline levels, but it does go down a little bit. But it's actually really not the thickness that matters. It's the quality of the tissue. So when we're seeing Liposana implanted, it's actually the quality that we're noting, better quality. And it's the thickness is not so important. It doesn't correlate necessarily with how a patient is feeling clinically.
And I think it's a good question from a clinician standpoint too, is that, patients will come in and I like to do before and after pictures. And that last patient I did, there's a good video where you can now look at his other foot that's not symptomatic, but has fat pad atrophy compared to his newly injected foot, post 2-week injection. But you can see, less like definitely fullness there. But I still gauge it based on patient symptoms, right? It's just no different than when you do an x-ray for a patient. You don't treat the x-ray, you treat the patient. So really it comes down to how they feel and how they respond to it.
All right, now it's going to be time to go rapid fire, right? And
yeah, I'm going to skip around a little bit. There's a question here. How do you present this to a patient when they'll be the first one that you inject? You don't have any experience to give them outcomes and what to expect.
yeah, I think that's a great question, Dr. Ho. I mean, the first time you used it, what did you tell the patient? I think the doctor is asking like, hey, I've never done this. How do I give the patient confidence that this is going to work for them?
So how did you address your first bunion surgery, or how did you address any of your first coming out as a new practitioner, right? You don't say, you're my first case. Let's do this, but you speak with confidence and you present the facts. And I don't think you need to present yourself in any way. Be genuine, be authentic. I think if you try to say, oh, I've done 100 of these, I mean, people can detect when you're not authentic and say that I've got a new product that is, supposed to help with, cushioning, relieve the pain. What are your thoughts? Would you be open to trying this? Right. And so I would just present it that way. And you say, yeah, it's a new product, but it's, backed by research. And, it's in a way, it's almost like you can present it like, I'm so excited to incorporate this into my practice because it is new, it's cutting edge, and I'm excited, And I'll tell you, all of those patients, because I've had Leneva, whatever before, but now with Liposana, I'm like, hey, I've got a new product. It's actually like full fat, we can inject it into the area. I mean, not a single one of them has said, how many of these have you done? But even if they ask you that, it's like, well, you can always kind of reverse that around and say, well, does that matter how many I've done? I mean, or how many do you want me to do? Right. It's like when you reverse it on them, it makes them a little bit like, oh, okay, I'm sorry I even asked, But I think, be authentic and be genuine and be honest about it.
And the good thing is there are folks that are having great success with the product. There are studies to back it and all of that good stuff as well. So that should give you some confidence also.
How many milliliters on average are used per patient or per treatment? And how is the pricing? We already talked about the pricing. So how many milliliters on average are used?
Good question. So to me, I just kind of palpate the area. Typically, let's say, the region under like your subsecond, but now you incorporate, now it's subsecond and subthird, right? So it comes in 1.5 cc vials. So I would say that most of the time I do about 1.5 cc's. But it also, that's typically 4 foot. Now, if you're talking about heel, you might need 3 cc's. And so it really depends on the area. And I think you just kind of look at the surface area and gauge. And, there's no harm in actually doing, let's try 1.5 cc. I've done that too. Let's try 1.5 cc's. I've had patients where I say, I really think you need 3 cc's here, but maybe the cost prohibits them from trying the 1.5 cc or the 3 cc's. So we'll do 1.5 cc. They come back, we reevaluate. They're like, it's better, but the pain's not resolved. And then we ended up doing another 1.5 cc. And then they were just like, oh, wow, what a difference. So I think you can kind of gauge that as well.
So does that cover the question, how do you know, or how much product is needed for metatarsalgia and how many syringes are needed to treat metatarsalgia? That question went away. Yep.
So metatarsalgia. So, I mean, metatarsalgia is just a generic 4 foot pain term, right? But where is it? Is it, for example, the patient that I just injected was probably the diameter that I marked was about like the size of my thumb. Okay. And so that I did 1.5 cc's. But if you're getting pain like, sub second, third, maybe fourth, I think 3 cc's might be indicated. So it just depends on your assessment.
A couple of questions here about availability. One, is it available in Canada, or when will it be available in Canada? And also, is it available in New York? Because Leneva is not.
So I'm sorry, Bunyan King, just like DPMX, our product is not available in Canada yet, but hopefully soon, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. New York, though, on the other hand, yeah, we're excited to announce that we just got our tissue banking license in New York, and our product is available in New York. So we'd be happy to talk to you all about that.
Yeah, that's exciting. Is it FDA approved? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So human cellular tissue products are regulated by the FDA. So this would have the same type of FDA approval that Leneva has. It's just it's approved by the FDA under a different regulatory pathway called human cellular tissue products, the same as Leneva.
Okay. What size needle is needed for the injection?
There you go, Twee.
18, you can use 18 gauge or 20 gauge needle, but something larger than a 20 gauge needle to get it through that area for sure.
Any experience with issues injecting RA, DM, or immune compromised patients?
I've had zero. That last patient I just injected was diabetic. I've injected RA patients. I've injected, you know, and when you say immunocompromised, that could be RA or diabetic, but I've injected vasculopaths. Patients, I had a patient who had a small wound that was like on the verge of going down to bone, but she was not a surgical candidate, PAD, you know, and even with minimally invasive surgery, her cardiovascular surgeon was like, I wouldn't risk it. So we did, you know, injection and that really kind of padded the area and allowed it to heal. So I think that, you know, there's, you know, I think with anything, you still consent the patient, right? And let them know your risks and complications associated with it. But, you know, with anything else, I don't ever offer a guarantee of any sort. I hope that answers that question.
Any cautions about where or what structures to avoid, such as bone, tendon, tissue, etc.?
Well, I mean, you're staying, as long as you're staying in the subcutaneous tissue, I think you're going to be safe. You're not going down into bone, you're not going into to tendon. Make sure that, you know, like I said, when you angle the needle kind of shallow, you're right in that subcutaneous tissue area. That's the area that I would stay in. And somebody asked about the tips of the toes. I've had amazing results for painful tips and toes. You know, elderly patients whose skin is so thin that I'm like, okay, it's about to go down to bone if you don't do anything about this. Had amazing results.
I saw somebody ask if this is considered an allograft. The answer is most definitely. Our product is available in California. And go ahead, Ann, I'll let you get back into finding some ones.
How long does it last? Can you inject 2 sites with 1 injection? What keeps the injection from migrating to other areas?
It really stays in that area. I don't think there's any migration unless Molly tells me that some research shows that. I don't know. But I really would not divide. 1.5 cc's is such a nice little cushion. I call it almost like a little pillow for that area. I wouldn't divide it up. You know, I think keeping it to maximize the effects in that area. You know, don't, in my opinion, don't spread it too thin so that, you know, your patients don't get the full relief or improvement.
Say we said
Let's see what we got here. Interesting question, but relevant to what our, you know, we're all experiencing. Will the product be affected by GLP-1 weight loss injections?
I don't think so. I mean,
they work different systematically on the body.
yeah,
So.
I mean, GLP-1 weight loss is affecting how you digest your food and everything. So, I mean, obviously, if you lose a bunch of fat, but by the way, I did see a thing about Ozempic feet. Somebody posted this. I think it was Michelle McGowan. I can't remember, or no, Rhonda Eichenberg. I think she posted something on her Facebook that there was something I need to look into it more, but people who are on Ozempic and having fat, you know, rapid fat loss, they are getting fat pad atrophy. So that's something to look into.
Okay, so we said no NSAIDs for 1 to 2 weeks. How about those on immunobiologics? Yeah, we never recommend anybody to go off any type of long-term medication that they're on. That's totally fine. Dr. Hobazal, good to see you on here. So, Dr. Ho, do you bill for an office visit for this?
If they come in and let's say it's like first visit that we've talked about this, then yeah. But if it's a planned injection and we've already talked about it and they come in another time for an injection, I usually don't. If that makes sense. So
we typically don't.
I mean, if you are doing an evaluation and management of that patient and you feel like your documentation can substantiate an E&M code, then by all means do it. I mean, if you're addressing other things when they're there, orthotics or scanning, whatever, by all means, I think that's a valid time to bill that. But if it's truly isolated, you're not doing anything else, you're just doing an injection, I don't.
And we typically do not recommend for billing for the injection at all. So
There's no code for billing for the injection, so it's a cash service. But like I said, if you're doing an E&M for other issues and you're going over, you know, orthotic follow-up, whatever the case is, you know, and breaking it in, whatever, you can bill whatever you feel substantiates your documentation.
So Steve, we don't have statistics on different demographic populations and acceptance of the $1,300, but I can tell you for the last 2 years now that we've been offering cash pay services, it's totally unpredictable. Like there's some places that we work with in Arkansas that you never think would pump out the type of volume that they do. And then you have some more upscale areas where the patients aren't into it at all. So we don't really have any specific rhyme or reason, but I think that's why the general idea is just offering it and seeing how the acceptance is in your area, and then you can price it accordingly.
Yeah, and what I mean by that, Steve, is test your market. Let's say that you aren't comfortable with 1,300 and you want to start out with 1,000. By all means, start out with 1,000. But if every patient's going, yeah, I'll take that, $1,000 nothing, then you may be underpricing it, and you can start kind of slowly ramping. That's kind of how I tested it out for my market.
And then, Doc, I know you get this question a lot, so I know what your answer is going to be, but do you offer the patient a guarantee if they don't get the desired result?
Do we offer a guarantee on surgery? Do we offer a guarantee on a steroid injection? Do we offer a guarantee on orthotics? I offer no guarantees. Every single one of my consent forms says no guarantees expressed or implied.
Molly, I'll
How
give
long
this
does
one.
it last?
Yeah, I'll give
Yeah,
that
we
one to
talked
you,
about
Molly.
long-term benefits. So how long does it last? How often will they need the service?
I'm going to give that one to you, Molly, since you've been working with the product for the longest.
Yeah, so we have data out till 19 months now, I guess almost 20, but for the most part, so far, patients are one and done situation. In the instances where there has been a reimplant, it's kind of what Dr. Ho was talking about, where you're a little bit conservative with it at first. The deficit might be a little bit larger than what you're thinking and may require another booster, as we call it. But for the most part, it's been one and done for most patients. Again, we're monitoring longer term outcomes, but we have out to about 20 months of data right now.
And that's the great thing about this product, guys, is, you know, we hear from competitive products that they need to have reapplication. So the product may seem a little bit expensive up front, but you're getting the long-term desired results. The product is available in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So how is the product derived? So it is an organ donation. So it's an adipose derived tissue through organ donation. Dr. Ho, do you have your patient sign a consent, and what procedure do you call it?
Yeah, so I just everything I do that involves implanting any allograft is I consent for. And really the nice thing about the Liposana is that it can either be frozen or refrigerated. And for me, I have a little freezer. I keep all my regenerative products in, and I don't thaw anything out until I acquire a consent form and a financial agreement form that the patient understands that this is a cash service, and they sign and agree, they understand what the cost is. And then the consent form, just like any other consent, risk and complications associated. And I just, I call it an injectable or allograft implantable allograft, I suppose.
So Molly, any experience with this and Jehovah Witnesses?
Oh, well, that's a good question.
No, I don't think, not that I know of.
Yeah.
I think just be honest with the patient. I think leave it up to the Jehovah's Witness to decide, right? And you just tell them that this is a fat graft it's you know, it's an allograft. It's not from their body. I don't know what their belief. I think typically their belief is like no blood transfusions and maybe other products. I don't know, but I think you present it honestly what the product is and let the patient decide.
Peter has asked a question a couple times. Does the ulcer need to be closed before injecting?
Molly, you worked with those, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, no, actually, we've done several cases, both in office and OR for open wounds. Now they're typically smaller wounds, about 3 centimeters or less, but we actually have a study under review right now of OR patients receiving Liposana. These patients had really, really chronic ulcers, 3-4 years old, and I think about 80% of them ended up closing pretty quickly within the first 3 months. But the more notable thing about it is these ulcers were about a year out from those patients. They aren't recurring. So normal recurrence rates within a year are probably around 40 to 50%. But we believe that if you implant it before all that scar tissue forms and you have that true adipose in there, it's gonna make that ulcer more durable and less likely to recur.
Perfect. All right, special freezer or a regular one. As we mentioned, the good news is this product can be kept for 6 months at standard refrigeration. If you do want to get a special freezer, -20 Celsius is a good bet. Dr. Fisher, when do you collect the money? That's one for Dr. Ho.
I mean, I think you do what is comfortable in your area and your demographic. If it makes you feel more comfortable to collect half up front from the patient, you can do that. Or you can inject after. I mean, call me crazy. We collect after. And I've never had any problems. So it really, it's up to you. I think you know your area best.
Okay, Dr. Coulter, can you get information sent to your office? Yes, we are going to be sending up another follow-up email after this tomorrow morning with information on how to contact us. So please just supply us with your office information and we'll get everything over to you. Okay, has
We
this
tried
been
it for IPKs.
Yes, this is great for IPKs. And I think the next question, but down below, is corns between the toes. This is a really good option when somebody is not a candidate for surgery or doesn't want surgery. Because why do those lesions form? It's usually some bony prominence impinging against another, and there's no cushioning between. So the body forms these calluses and dead cells that can become, you know, that build up as corns and calluses and becomes painful. So it's really good, you know, to breed it down, inject it. It's a really good substitute for surgery.
Perfect. Dr. Stavros, it's going to be the same. So 6 months in the refrigerator and also 6 months at -20 degrees Celsius.
Any contraindications?
I think mainly infection, right, Molly?
Yeah, I mean, there's no contraindications unless the patient might have some sort of allergy to one of the cryopreservatives, which are listed out in our package insert, but otherwise no contraindications.
All right. I think we got about everything answered. Rudy, we do not use pillows for the feet. So we're good there. Thank you. I so much appreciate everybody coming out to join us tonight. I think it was a really great crowd. Hopefully this was informative for everybody, and hopefully we have the opportunity to work with some of y'all. And thank you for Dr. Ho and Molly for being awesome presenters here with us tonight, and Anne at Podiatry Meetings for getting this together.
Yeah, thank you guys for putting together such a well done presentation. And it was nice to hear both sides, the sales, the physician, and the science behind it. So thank you guys for your time. Thanks to everyone who attended tonight and stayed on all night. Thanks everybody. And we will see you next time.
Cheers, y'all. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.